If you'd ask anyone close to me to describe me, they would probably mention my slides. And I've been walking around in these beauties for about 20 years and I wear them everywhere, and I mean everywhere. And I'm telling you this on my YouTube channel about AI and design because I created an entire visual identity for a luxurious slides brand. And the concept, the photoshoot, the designs, the mockups, everything all using AI. And it's not just a concept, I use a professional client-ready workflow. And in today's video I show you how I did this step by step. Before I show you my full process, I want to briefly tell you about how this project started. About a week ago I was walking around in my slides like always, and I joked to my girlfriend about starting my own ultra luxurious slides brand. And she laughed and she said that there were already brands doing that, and after checking out the ones that she mentioned, I was convinced that there was still room to create something that truly stands out. So I sat down at my desk and I sketched the idea, and I used Nano Banana Pro to shape it into a unique product with these cute ears and these faux fur materials, and she was genuinely enthusiastic. So that pushed me to take it even further, and I built a full visual identity with AI, and I decided to make a video showing you exactly how I did it. And so here we are. I used to start each project by searching Pinterest for design inspiration. But because I've been using it for many years, the algorithm shows me a very specific style, which I really like, but it doesn't fit every single design project. So instead of searching for design inspiration online, I now generate it with AI. And I use Nano Banana Pro to create these 3x3 grids with concepts for visual identities. And in seconds I can now explore multiple directions without generating images one by one. And this completely changed how I start my design projects. I first came across this idea on X, where a 3x3 grid is being used to generate multiple variations from a single image in a grid layout. And I refined the prompt to let the AI come up with its own ideas for a brand identity. I added a link in the description to download this prompt, along with all the other prompts and assets I use in today's video, completely free for you to use. So all I did is upload a single reference image of the product along with the prompt into the Gemini chat. And it generated these results. In this example, it added dogs to the product images, but instead of a normal Dalmatian, it added this French bulldog with a Dalmatian pattern, which I thought was very funny and playful. In the images here, it created very luxurious looking brand images, and what I like here is that it has these outdoor images, which was kind of what I envisioned this brand to look like. I also like the idea of minimalism for the product photos, and most importantly, contrast. So slides are usually associated with comfort and indoor use, but I like to position them as something refined and worn outdoors with confidence. And that contrast, that became the core concept of the brand. I also took the idea of including dogs and adding them as iconic brand mascots. So based on the 3x3 image grids, I compile a selection of images with things that I like the dogs as reference image to the slide designs, the luxurious look and feel of the outdoor environment, and the minimalistic product photography style. Based on these 3x3 grid boards I used for inspiration, I kept the design style extremely minimal on purpose, so no colors and a minimal bold sans serif font, because I want the visuals and the slides themselves do all the talking. For the typeface I chose a bold sans serif font because it feels confident and it matches the idea of taking pride in something that's usually seen as casual. For the logo I also use AI, but not to generate the final logo because I want full control over the design. Instead I use AI to explore ideas quickly here, and like before I generated 3x3 grid, only this time with logo ideas. And most of these ideas are not usable at all, but that's fine because I only need one idea that feels right. And this one here stood out to me. It links back to the dog mascot and clearly shows a front view of the slide with the two ears. And I cleaned it up and adjusted the thickness so it would match the font. Here you can see the claquette logo, which means slides in French, in a real life use case. And I later in the video go more in depth about how to create mockups like these that match your project. Finally, I used ChatGPT to brainstorm for tagline ideas, and for this project I like the tagline "Take pride in your slides." Photography is the most important part of most visual identities. These images are what people see first, and if they are good, they can carry the entire brand. That's why brands often spend thousands of dollars on their photo shoots. To create professional visuals like this with AI, I follow a few simple steps. I first create the model, then I add the clothing, and then I create the environment, and only at the end I add the product. And this technique where you iterate and you combine elements in a certain order is also known as working with building blocks. And doing this is very important because if you do everything at once, you lose realism and details. To start, I create the human model, and I use a prompt that gives me a high resolution but very neutral image. I want the image to be as clean as possible, so later Nano Banana focuses only on the model. And that's why the model wears a plain white t-shirt, blue jeans and simple sneakers, and the background is just light gray. And this doesn't only apply to people, by the way. I use the same idea for everything I want to combine later. And here you can see I did the same for the dogs, for example. To save time, I also built a small library of reusable models, and this is called a character reference sheet. I uploaded the original model and changed things like hair, skin tone and gender. And I included this reference sheet in the free download, which you can find in the description of this video. For this project, I chose these 3 models. So for clothing inspiration, I used Pinterest, and I like this vintage style in contrast to the modern looking slides, but the colors didn't quite match the product itself. But that's not a problem at all, as I can easily change the colors with Nano Banana. First I add the clothes to the model, and I use a very simple prompt for this that only asks to replace the clothing of the first reference image with the second one. But something that is very important here to note is that I do not add the slides yet. Even though it feels logical as I'm working on the clothing, you may lose accuracy very fast when you combine this image with other images a few times, so I only add the most important part, which is the product, at the very last. It's a bit like that telephone game, you know, the earlier you add complexity, the more things will break. Next I create the environment, and this depends on your project. You can go for an outdoor setting, a studio, or a more cinematic look, for example, whatever fits your project and your style. While brainstorming with the 3x3 grid method for Claquette, I chose a high-end neighborhood in London that helps sell that luxury feeling, and the minimalistic colors of the scenery are in perfect contrast with the colorful slides. I used a strong bright daylight to generate a more editorial style, and this lighting style creates those clear shadows. One thing to avoid is overcrowded scenes, so too many people or objects can cause hallucinations where the AI model invents details. So at this point I have the product photo, a clean model image with the clothing, the dog and the environment reference images. So now I start combining them step by step. I start by placing the model into the environment, and the lighting adapts automatically to the scene. I control the camera angle and the framing, and in this case I prompt for a low angle and a full body shot because I want to have a complete image that I can refer to and create an entire photo shoot from. And only at the very end I add the product. I repeat this process for all 3 models. And after that I start with iterating. I reuse these images as references, and I change the camera angles, the poses of the models and image ratios. And if you ever get stuck with coming up with new angles or poses, you can always ask ChatGPT to help you with writing additional prompts. It's just a very fast way to keep things moving. So with these visuals, I now have everything that I need for the actual design work. And since the images are so strong, I let them take center stage and keep everything else minimal. In this social media post, for example, I did almost no actual design work and I only added a simple black button with rounded corners. I also created an animated social media post. And I used Kling in the Higgsfield editor for this. And I only defined the start and the end frame. And then to add that movement, I used the dolly zoom effect. And Higgsfield comes with many pre-made camera movement options, but I got the prompt that I used for this dolly zoom from Roberto Nixon's website, and I'll leave a link in the description for this prompt as well. One of the great advantages of working with AI is that you don't need to arrange an entirely new photo shoot to change something. You can simply generate additional images or adjust existing ones through prompting. And here I use the same image for both a social media post and a website banner by generating a vertical and a horizontal version of the same picture. And there's one technique that I use a lot to control where the subject in the image is positioned. I start with a vertical image and I position the subject full frame in the center, and then I expand it horizontally on one or either sides depending on where I'd like to position the subject. And adjusting the images this way is much easier than fixing your composition later in the design process. Instead of using standard mockups, I now create mockups that match the visual identity of the project. And this way the presentation feels like part of the identity itself. I always start with the scene. I generate a scene that matches the style and the lighting of my visuals. So in this case, a clean, minimal office with that same bright lighting as the outdoor photo shoot. And this is what makes everything feel so consistent. Next, I add the mockup. I use these very clean, minimal mockups from my own collection, and these mockups give me full control over the layout and the colors. And similar to the previous building blocks, I want this to be as minimalistic as possible so the AI model doesn't add any unwanted things. From there, it's just combining everything in a way that feels right. So in my prompt, I asked for a centered front view screen and then iterated with different angles. And this technique works for all kinds of mockups, for phones, books and packaging, for example. For detailed designs like websites, I often refine things in Adobe Photoshop by placing my real design on top. And sometimes it's even better to generate a blank screen from the start. This gives me realism from AI and accuracy from real design files. With this project, I created a complete client-ready visual identity using AI. But the most important part isn't the tools. It is how you use those tools in your workflow. If you approach AI step by step from idea to visuals to presentation, you can use it in real commercial projects. I added all the prompts and the files to a free download which you can find in the description of this video, so you can get started with creating visual identities this way yourself. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.